Sorry. Before we start the meeting, I'm sure all of you are aware of the tragic events that unfolded in Nottingham yesterday, and our thoughts and prayers are with the families who have been so tragically affected, and in particular the loss of two young lives of people that almost certainly would have made a very, very positive contribution to society going forward. So I think it is appropriate, with your agreement, that as a mark of respect and indeed solidarity with those families, that we stand and have a minute's silence in memory. The recording, I've been notified, has already started. So if we can move to the agenda, please. Item number 1 is to note the appointment of myself as the chairman of this committee and Councillor Lee as the vice chairman of this committee for the next municipal year. Item number 2 is to note the membership of this committee for the next municipal year. Membership being Councillor Butler, Councillor Deakin, Councillor Henry, Councillor Meakin, Councillor Payne, Councillor Saddington, Councillor Smith, Councillor Turner and Councillor Upton. Item number 3, the minutes of the last meeting that was held on the 3rd of May. Those that were present, can I have your approval to sign them as a true record? All those in favour? Thank you. Item number 4, apologies for absence. Having just read out the list, I note that there are a number of substitutes, so who's going to advise us formally?
Thank you. We have had apologies from Councillors Henry and Payne, with substitutes being Councillors Creamer and Pringle. We've also had apologies from Councillors Deakin and Meakin, with substitutes being Councillors Martin and Purdue-Haran. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and you're all welcome, but some of you are regular, I won't say visitors, almost members. I don't know why you just didn't get yourselves appointed and have done with it. It saved a lot of hassle at the beginning of the meeting. Number 5, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest by officers or members? Nope. Right, so we come to the first substantive item, which is the agenda item number 6, which is the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman's decisions, March to May of this year. And there are 2 decisions, 2 adverse decisions that are set out in front of us. But before we get into those, I'll move the recommendation on page 9.
Chairman, I'll second.
Thank you. So the first Ombudsman's decision is about Miss Y complaining that the council failed to pay her son, Mr. X, the correct amount of money to allow him to commission his care through direct payments. Is there anything that the department wishes to add, to highlight, as far as this report is concerned, before I ask members to comment?
I'd just like to introduce Maria Ballantyne, who's Group Manager for the area concerned. Nothing to comment at this point, but happy to answer any member questions.
Fine. Okay then, members. Any comments or questions you wish to make on this report? Yes, Councillor Pringle.
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks for the report. A few points before I raise a question. We had 2 Ombudsman cases where NCC have been found at fault. One relates to the failure of to secure an educational health and care plan costing £4,500 due to 15 months lost provision. In May's meeting, investigation dated found fault costing £2,700. In March's meeting, the HCP fault on the 15th of the 2nd cost over £3,300. In January's meeting, councillors found at fault regarding disabled travel assistance, costing just short of £3,000. So a total of just over £13,500, which we can all see. I'm sorry for repeating what's in the paper, but I'm not clear or happy that just a repayment is a resolution to the effect that this has had on families. I think there needs to be something deeper involved in this than just seeing payments made to people. And my worry is that, my question is, how many people or families are we expected to come forward that we're aware of presently, which again would affect payments being made to them? Thank you, Chair.
I don't know whether you wish to pick up that from an adult social services perspective, or whether Mr. Olsen wants to pick it up from a complaint. Well, both of you can pick it up, can't you? Who's going to kick off then?
So, from an adult social care perspective, I completely agree, Councillor Pringle, that financial restitution isn't always the best answer. Unfortunately, Ombudsman, when they set their decisions, often use that as part of the measures that they expect us to apply. In terms of the amounts. Any ombudsman judgment that goes against us is not a good thing. However, I would say within the context of adult social care, they are quite few and far between. And if you look at the national picture, actually Nottinghamshire has much less adverse decisions than lots of other authorities. However, that's not to say that we don't continue to try and put things right as soon as we're aware that there is an issue. Richard, I don't know if there's any further context that you would want to add to that.
Thank you, Ainsley. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the question, Councillor Pringle. I think what we've got to also try and remember is about 90% of our complaints don't even go to the Ombudsman. We've resolved them before they get there. Some of them will be with financial remedy, and there is a lot of work going on in the background, as has been since these complaints, which you've got to remember are historic, about recommendations that departments have done, that my team has suggested, everything like that that's happening in the background. There's workshops being carried out now as well from my complaints team to help support team managers with responses and that kind of thing. And yeah, I mean, you've asked about the EHCP and the children's cases. Maybe when we can discuss that when we come onto that case in a bit, because I know there's a lot of work being done in that department as well.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, so I'm referring to the Ombudsman's report. I don't doubt that there's work going on. I don't doubt that there's positive work going on, because that's what I'd expect. That's what everyone here would expect. So we fully support you in that. This is not a good read as far as I'm concerned. And the question is, how many can we expect in the future? Are we aware of what's coming that aren't part of the 99% that you sought out previously?
Yes, and I will let Peter and the team have their bit in a minute. But yes, there are some more in the pipeline. cases from a year, 18 months ago that the Ombudsman's taken time to investigate. There are, I know, 3 or 4 that are being investigated as we speak. Chances are there'll be some fault found with them. Amount-wise, couldn't tell you, but yeah, there'll be probably similar amounts.
Yeah, I mean, I take your point. It's difficult to predict exactly how many are going to come to us in the fullness of time, because we've certainly sent out a message to the complaints team that we want to see complaints resolved at a much earlier stage, if at all possible. And what is irritating with this particular case is a mistake was made, and we can expect that mistakes will be made from time to time. But what's particularly irritating is that, having identified that a mistake was made, it didn't appear to be rectified as quickly as it should have been. And I think that's a lesson that needs to be learned. We make a mistake. Sorry, we've got it wrong on this occasion. What can we do to put it right? That should be the mantra as far as I'm concerned. I'm not going to criticise people for making the odd mistake under pressured circumstances, but we need to be able to be much more fleet of foot in putting things right. And I think that's a lesson to be learnt from this case. Are there any other comments or questions on this particular case before I move on to the next one? Councillor Butler.
Picking up on what you've just said, you mentioned that there are other cases going through being investigated at the moment. So are they being investigated by us, or have they got to the Ombudsman stage at this stage?
Yeah, so I was answering how many are at the Ombudsman. I mean, there's always going to be cases that are going through our process, but we know of some that are at the Ombudsman, similar to the second case on here, that are being investigated.
As we've been told in the past, Councillor Butler, even though we may feel that we've done our best to resolve a particular issue and have got to the end of our processes, internal processes, we always have to advise complainants that they can go to the Ombudsman, and some of them, as a matter of course, will. And that's their right, so we have to deal with that. Can I move on then to the next one, which is an EHCP issue, which we've had before. Do the departmental representatives want to say anything about this point before I throw it open to members? Mr. McConaughey.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Sorry, I'm trying to find the right button. And just by way of introductions, with me today in the committee is Linda Poole, who is the Group Manager for ICDS, Integrated Children's Disability Service. And Linda joined us just over 2 months ago to support improvements within this area. And the Service Manager, Rob Briggs, who manages the Pre-16 Education, Health and Care team within ICDS, who are also driving forward improvements. Just at the very outset, I want to acknowledge that with regard to complaints that we're currently seeing coming through, a lot of them do stem back several years. We know from our recent local area partnership, CQC and SEND inspection, and the outcome of that there are failings that need to be addressed locally, and there's a significant scheme of work underway to make those improvements. So we are currently experiencing the legacy of some of those challenges in the system, and some of those areas that need rapid improvement that have been identified through that inspection process. I think, just generally in terms of levels of complaints, we've talked previously at this committee around the pressure in the system, nationally and particular locally within Nottinghamshire. Post the pandemic, the rise in requests for education health care plans and that significant growth we're seeing in need within Nottinghamshire, and we're taking some active steps to address capacity to mitigate against that level of demand. That's, we need to go further in order to reduce the complaints. So that's the position we're in now. Significant programme of work, which I'm happy to talk about in terms of what's planned, and I'm sure there'll be opportunities both here and through select committees and the education health and care plan review that we're currently engaging in with select committee around our processes and what we're doing to make improvements, some of which includes capacity and resource in terms of workforce, but also a change in the governance arrangements around SEND processes, so that we're making sure that we get to a point where we have far less need for complaints to come through this local government ombudsman process and to be heard here. But we are aware there are some in the pipeline at the moment, and we've employed a complaints officer to support with managing those complaints more effectively, which has been recognised in the response as a positive piece of work, and that is having an impact. But it's going to take time to see that impact in terms of what's coming to this committee. But we're committed to improving that. We're putting the right resource in, and we're taking it really seriously because we all want the best outcomes for children, young people, and their families. So a bit of context just in terms of where we are now, if that's okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. The Vice Chairman is going to kick off with a question.
Thank you. Thank you. You're saying this is historical, and in part it is because it's May 2021. However, it also states it's March 2023, so that's only 2 months ago. So when are we going to stop seeing these complaints coming in? Because every meeting I ask the same question: is you keep saying the historical, however, we keep seeing the same complaints coming through. When are we going to see the work you've put into place reflected in the complaints we're getting?
I'll let one of our officers pick up the details around this particular case in terms of what the issues were in March following the annual review. We are, when I say putting things in place, that takes time in terms of recruitment of staff and onboarding. So we've got, in terms of our EHC review process, which this refers to, and we've got 4 new plan writers coming into post. The roles have been advertised already. They are being recruited to at the moment, but the impact of that is yet to be seen. But it's not where maybe a month or 2 months ago there's a plan in place. The act of recruitment has been undertaken, and the service now onboarding the staff to make that difference, have that impact.
Can I come straight in on that one? I completely accept what you're saying. However, we were asking these questions a year ago, and we were being advised a year ago that you were putting things in place to make sure this wouldn't happen again. However, we're seeing the same things happen. I would say a year is more than enough time to put certain things into place, but I could be wrong.
Could I just also add there that we need extra staffing to meet the demands as Peter's just described. So those extra staffing that we're bringing in will help to mitigate some of these complaints. The other factor that we're making clear in terms of auditing over 2,600 CPs, so that we're compliant, and things such as therapeutic services are included. And so part of our processes now are looking at what are the EHCPs demanding. And like I say, there's 2,600 of them, which will take time for us to look through those to make sure they're absolutely compliant. With regards to the other ombudsman's cases, currently we have 4 more pre-16 ombudsman's possible cases and 1 post-16 at this stage. Thanks.
It seems a pity that you weren't able to respond to the deteriorating situation far quicker, that you weren't fleeter of foot in recruiting staff. It's I hear what you say, and the committee hears what you say about recruiting staff to enable you to deal with a rising workload. It's a great pity this didn't take place sometime earlier, so that we didn't get into this situation. And I think that will be the criticism that will be levelled against management, that you've simply not been alert to the deteriorating situation and should have responded sooner. Anybody else? Councillor Butler, then Councillor Upton.
Thank you. Yeah, it's rather like the previous case. We all accept that everyone's human and mistakes happen, and we know that the pressures are there. But as part of the work you're doing, I wonder, is there something in the way of working? I mean, we all live in this new way of working, of some people in the office and some people working remotely and all the rest of it, and which is across the board. Are you perhaps looking at just how we operate things in general? Because I suspect, and you hear this a lot with regards to all sorts of council services, are there issues with communications of, you know, a team not talking to another team or whatever, that type of thing? So I just wonder if there's anything you've maybe identified there. And then with regards to this particular case, just one question. There's reference to the parent paying privately for an OT report, as the council had failed to arrange one from the previous. So has that highlighted or identified anything as to why did the parent have to find it necessary to pay for their own report? Thank you.
Thank you. If I can start and then other officers pick up if that's okay, particularly around the occupational therapy report. But in terms of that issue around communication and new ways of working, absolutely. I think there's been a significant amount of change in the in this department. I am part of that change as a newly appointed service director. We've had our group manager for ICDS retire, and we've appointed a new group manager for the interim period to stabilise that service. What that's done in that period of time is had an opportunity to bring services closer together, particularly around the education, health and care plan process, where some of this is delivered through our educational psychology service and some is delivered through the integrated children's disability service, which used to sit in a different part of the a different division entirely. So by bringing those two parts closer together and by bringing those the management and the teams together, that's allowing us to improve that process currently. Within our improvement plan, we're undertaking a process of end-to-end mapping of the entire system to make sure it is as effective as it can be, to identify exactly as you point out where are the opportunities to do things differently. There's been some immediate action on that already, particularly around EHC assessments and changing our process there. But we don't want to lose the quality of what's delivered, but we are mapping that entire process, and we've got a project manager who's working that through to present that to us so we can look at where there's other options for improvement. Take that on board. Thank you.
Councillor Upton.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't necessarily want to go into the details that others have said on this particular case. I'm more interested in does the group teams have a quality assurance system? By that I mean, I've worked under QA systems where there's a huge amount of communication, verbal and written and email traffic that comes in, and it was logged. And at the very least, I had to respond back in 1, 2 or 3 days. I've received your communication. I haven't got the answer at the moment, but at least the person was aware that I got it, and it was tracked then and monitored, and it couldn't get out the system, so to speak. When you look at the analysis of the Ombudsman, either page 5 or page 25 of the reports, the analysis, the things that concern me there, item 44, the council's response to Mrs X's April 22 complaint was wrong, and when she provided the correct information, she did not get any response. This is fault, failing to adhere to the complaint procedure. So, I mean, to me, there seems to be two things running here. Does the complaint procedure have a QA system that logs all the complaints and then is monitored for responses so nothing escapes from it? And does the in-house service department, if you like, have a QA system whereby it logs correspondence and concerns and complaints, if you like, be it people working at home or in the office? It's around that communication, because I think that's what comes out to me a lot in this, and the fact that we don't comply, or in this case, we didn't adhere. It says item 45, the council issued the amended draft EHCP a month late, which is a fault. It did not adhere to the statutory time limit. So above and beyond what I would like to see as an in-house QA response protocol, there's something around not complying with the law. So that was a question is there a QA, a system tracking within the team and within the complaints procedure that monitors and tracks so nothing escapes from the system?
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I'll take the complaint procedure question then. In short, yes. There's a brand new system that came in set late 2021 where we can log the complaints. It goes red if it's getting near timescales. My complaints officers are really hot anyway because they will chase team managers for responses and that kind of thing anyway. And then there's a weekly check done by the senior practitioner. So yeah, that's the complaints bit anyway. Thank you.
we also have appointed a complaints officer who only joined us in April as well, and we do track all of the complaints now. We turn them around within the timeline, but that is only recently, so we make sure that they feed into our own data tracker and also into Richard's as well, so that we're absolutely compliant in terms of responses. Thank you.
Okay.
That's useful information. That's very reassuring, and I'm pleased. Did I miss a comment there? Did you say that in late 2021 the complaint system was a new system brought in
No,
to track it? Because this complaint is April 2022, so I'm thinking it's a year later than the 2021
Our
date.
team, yes.
For your team,
Yeah.
2021.
Yeah.
So did it miss this complaint then in 2022?
I don't think it was around. I think it was more around the information given from the team rather than actual handling of it in terms of timescales.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions on this particular case? If not, then the recommendations have been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Thank you, that's unanimous. If we can move to the next item, which is item number 7, which is the Assurance Mapping Annual Report. You have got the report set out in front of you, and there are 3 recommendations set out at the bottom of page 30, which I move.
Chairman, I second.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from members, officers? Councillor Creamer.
Yeah, just a short one. It's nice to see ambers rather than reds, but the areas of concern concerning the references to the municipal health checks identifying. Just a question: when was this actually undertaken and published, and is it available to the public? Their report to be.
Which page are you referring to? Just so we're all on.
Referring to a page per se. The risk assessment. Areas currently, I'll read it out as I've got it written here. Ambers concerning risk and management reference Europe Municipal Health Check, identifying gaps in the Council's risk management approach. This document isn't included in the appendix or in the background. And when was this actually undertaken? Is it available for members of the public and ourselves to actually view as a background paper? So it's just a general question. It's not actually questioning its validity or what, it's just the results itself. The physical results.
Sorry, picking it on page 45, is that the reference point to me? So the Zurich undertook a risk assessment, health assessment in 2021, and it left the council with an action plan of action to take. We're currently working towards that action plan in implementing a risk management processes. The paper isn't included because what we do on the assurance mapping is we capture sources of assurance from across the council. So that's just an example of where that is. Because if we appended every actual example, we'd be here for days. But it has been made available to officers. I don't know if it's been shared with members, I'm not sure. But it was done as a report to CLT, and CLT are monitoring progress with that going forward in terms of addressing those risks. There are some gaps, because at the moment we are still wanting to recruit a risk manager to actually fulfil that role and take those actions forward as well. So progress is being made and risk registers are being completed. Some of those actions still yet to be completed.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and that's welcome. It was just the actual process when it's actually done. Would it be open for scrutiny, openness to the public? That was all, basically, so that people could actually see the process they've gone through.
Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, rather than Councillor Creamer likes to see more amber than red, I must say I'm pleased to see quite a lot of green on here as well. Let's be a little bit positive. But one query about one of the ambers is on page 45 of the yellows, and the transformation and change. And I think you've actually just touched on this, but on the middle box that refers to the second line, there's the comment in there, the commissioning framework is, the line below that, staff turnover in the group is high. So you've got high staff turnover going on there. dare we ask sort of what the reason is for that, or is it the usual sort of us versus external competition, so to speak?
Well, I'm sure Marge can come in terms of other support if I get this wrong, but I think generally across us and local government, we've suffered from a bit of turnover, substantially higher than we have in previous years. We've had substantial issues in transformation and change in terms of the turnover, which has impacted in terms of the progress. In terms of the discovery phases around transformation, you'll be pleased to know that the transformation programs have actually been progressing as best we can, particularly in children's, in terms of their transformation programs, and in some parts of adults, not as fast as we would hope. But I'm confident from talking to the service director who's responsible for transformation change that we're trying to overcome those issues with the turnover in that particular team.
Okay.
We watch the result with interest then.
Indeed we do.
We do. Thank you. Thank you for that.
No further comments or questions? Councillor Martin.
Yeah, just one question on that, on the same thing really. Generally, when it's high turnover, it's about money, isn't it? So have we done a job appraisal, and are we on par with other municipal authorities? Same.
There's two parts to that question really. One is job evaluation to make sure they're in line with the gradings for all of the posts across the county council. The issues with market factors is still available to actually fill some of those posts. It would be wrong of me to comment about whether the overall structure of pay for Nottinghamshire County Council is putting us at a disadvantage or advantage compared to other local authorities and sectors to record in terms of recruitment, remembering that there are probably some key areas where we are struggling. I would look from ICT where there's some key skills which in generally across the UK we're struggling in terms of recruiting.
Thank you, Chair. Just to add a little bit on the turnover. So these figures were taken at a time when turnover was at a high point, at its worst. What we've seen in the last couple of months is things starting to improve. So we have now been able to appoint to those jobs that we were struggling to appoint to, and overall our turnover rate is reducing. Earlier, elsewhere in the report we talk about it being 12%. It's down to 8% now. So actually we're seeing things beginning to turn around now. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, the trouble with these annual reports is always that they're looking back, and by the time we get them, things have moved on. So I think the news is more encouraging. But in any case, we always do need to have some sort of turnover because it's good to bring in new ideas and refresh. So I don't think we're too concerned about that at this stage. Okay, with those assurances, and it is an assurance mapping report, all those in favour of the recommendations? Thank you very much. That is carried. The next item on the agenda is item number 8, which is the Chief Internal Auditor's annual report for 22-23. And you have the report in front of you, and there are two recommendations, 48 and the top of 49, which I move.
Second.
Thank you. Any comments or questions on this report? Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a shame that colleagues from the complaints department have left the room because I think we need to be a bit positive. They've had a bit of quite right. We've asked some questions this morning about Ombudsman's reports and all the rest of it, but I'm being positive here. And on page 57 of the yellow pages, I think we just ought to acknowledge the paragraph 22. That says the Ombudsman's annual report for the year ending March 2022 provided assurance that the outcomes of complaints received by this council had the lowest uphold rate of all the statistically significant councils. So that basically is saying that yes, things go wrong and people complain and it's regrettable that happens, but at the same time the Ombudsman is actually saying that on the whole it's not a bad set of work that we're doing here. So I really just wanted to sort of give our colleagues and staff a bit of encouragement there, but they're not here to see it, which is a shame.
Thank you for that. I've had assurances that that will be passed on, but you're quite right. As an authority, overall, we are doing pretty well in terms of complaints, although, as we always say, one complaint is one too many, and we want to get it right all the time, but we are doing pretty well as far as that. Councillor Creamer, I think you indicated.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Mistakes, as you said earlier, Chair, mistakes can be made. It's how you rectify them and how you learn from them. It's the most important things, I think. Just on page 58, item 27, Zurich Municipal have been working with the council on a new risk safety and management, a new system to develop a new approach to risk management. Do we have any ideas when that will be implicated? Is it close to being, and when there'll be reports back from it, basically? So it's just a when.
Well, I know Simon would be desperate to come in and actually respond, but I think I will. It's taken us a little time in terms of the recruitment process, in terms of bedding in what is going to be the new approach. We've spent a lot of time with Zurich, going around the councils, around the council departments, in terms of trying to get a consistent and new approach to the way that we manage risk. And we are waiting for, we've now restructured Simon's area, which allows us to recruit to a corporate risk manager post, which hopefully then will internalise that work and therefore be able to drive it ourselves in terms of that, in terms of just buying it on an ad hoc basis from Zurich Municipal. It will require us to maybe look into where risk safety emergency management board fits with where corporate thing, but we've had that initial work to CLT, and so I'm quite excited in terms of what will come back to us. We do a half-yearly review of corporate governance and the risks, so hopefully that will be coming around September, October time. So maybe that will be the time that we'll update the committee in terms of the progress around that.
So if you can contain your excitement until then.
No, quite happy with that. My next question was going to be, is it going to affect the way reporting's done at the moment? But it looks like they're actually linking together quite nicely. Thank you.
Okay. If there are no further comments or questions, then can we move to the vote on the report? All those in favour? Thank you very much. It's unanimous. The next item is item number 9, which is the follow-up of internal audit recommendations, which you've got set out in front of you, and there are 2 recommendations on page 75, which I move.
Chairman, I second.
Thank you. Any comments? Councillor Pringle.
Yeah, Chair, just to note, the 6-monthly review, that's a real positive, and I think it ties in with what Councillor Butler was saying, that, you know, we are a positive council, we like good results, and I know there's been some questions asked this morning which highlight complaints, which are needed. But as a council, I think the 6-monthly review just strengthens them areas as well for us.
Thank you very much for that. Any further comments on that? I think this is a good news story, really. The way these are being implemented, and it's an improved situation now. And I think all credit due to everyone concerned. Thank you very much. If there are no further comments or questions, can we move to the vote? All those in favour? That's unanimous again. Thank you. Moving on, item number 10 is a report on the use of the Councillors' Divisional Fund. This is to note the expenditure for the period for the last financial year, which I move, set out on page 84.
Chairman, I second.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? You've got all the details in front of you. It really is just so that we can be completely open and transparent as to where the money is being spent, and I think that's right and proper that we do. Councillor Butler.
Just an observation, really. We have this new electronic system of putting the claims in, and I think I was one of the guinea pigs before it went live. I was one of the ones to sort of trial it out. And yes, it's all my fault. But I have to say, since it's well, that's not all my fault. it's a collective way of working. But really, I just wanted to say that from I don't know if other colleagues who have used it will agree, but it's working pretty well, this electronic system. I think there are still some colleagues who are perhaps a little bit wary of it because, let's face it, people don't like change all the time. But credit where it's due, it works well. You go onto the system and it tells you how much is left in your balance and all the rest of it. So that was a job well done. So really, just a big up for the people who developed the software and all the rest of it.
Councillor Creamer, did you indicate? And then... Oh, right, sorry, I can't see.
I couldn't find it here. Perhaps I've missed it. Perhaps I just speak to the notes or something like that. And the fund has been fully utilised because it doesn't say how much. Yeah, there's probably a big pressure on this. I know we should count individually, but perhaps it just should be fully utilised for that.
Yeah, I think is the overall figure given somewhere. I thought I'd seen it somewhere. You're talking about individual members, Alec.
Not per se the individual members, but if the allocation, if there's a little bit not spent, so not identifying individual members, just saying that we've fully utilised it. There was 20,000 in the pot, we've used 20,000.
Right.
It doesn't, not exact figures, just for the public notices that everybody's using it correctly. So
yeah, we totals can go in on subsequent reports if that's what you would like. I'm grateful to Councillor Butler for his comments on the star of the show has come in. You couldn't hear us. Yeah, I'll come in a moment. Councillor Butler was very fulsome in his praise as to how the new electronic system is working, and that I think has been echoed by most members sitting around here who have used it, which I think is the majority of them. The only thing I find is that if I've not done one for a while, getting through to the final bit where I find once I get onto it, it's very easy to use. I wonder if there could be something more on the main page just to point us to that, but that's something for the future, no doubt. Joe, you wanted to say something?
Just to provide the total figures, if I may, Mr. Chairman, out of the 330,000 budget, £328,410.03 was spent, which left a balance of £1,589.97, and we had an amount of £265.40 that was returned to us by an organisation because the event that was being funded was cancelled.
Okay, so there you are. Answers your question. Thank you very much. It would be useful, I think, to have those figures in a future report. It'll save Councillor Creamer asking the question in future. You all happy to note that report? Oh, sorry, Councillor Martin, I'd missed you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm going to note my disappointment in the reduction of the fund because I find it extremely useful, very easy to use and very well managed, and it always has. And I've been a councillor since 2015, and I've always had great diversity in what I've used it for, and it supports a lot of my rural groups. And I'm just hoping that some of the CDF, the other funding, the larger funding that's closed off now, that it will be, some of the scoping on that might be broadened out a bit, because I can't remember what you call it. You've changed the name of it, haven't you? The other fund that's above this. The what? Yeah, the LCF. Yeah. So some of the criteria that's spent on, I'm hoping that potentially some of that criteria could be broadened out to cover some of the stuff that I won't be able to fund anymore, because I've got a couple of youth clubs that will probably have nowhere to go this winter because they rely on me to support them through that funding. And I just think, that's one of the sad facts of life. But we're not supposed to use it through and that sort of thing. So I think it's just a difficult one, and I can see why you cut the funding. But I've always found it a very useful tool.
Yeah, well, we had this debate, of course, at the Budget Council meeting, and we are one of a minority, a fairly small minority of authorities that even has a scheme. I don't know about the other districts locally, whether they have smaller schemes to operate in a similar way. The idea of the scheme was always to give out small amounts, and I'm not sure that it was really intended for ongoing support over many, many years, although once an organisation applies, I know from experience they tend to keep on reapplying. But in the cases that you highlight, then I think you ought to be talking to the relevant department to see whether or not they are able to support, since youth and community facilities or youth facilities is a function of this council, whether or not they're the youth element, the youth function in this council is able to offer support. But I'm glad that this scheme continues, and it will no doubt provide support to a lot of very worthy organisations going forward. Any further comments or questions? In which case, can we go to the vote? All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. The last item on the agenda is the work programme which is set out in front of you, and we have a recommendation set out on page 132, which I move.
Second, Chairman.
Any comments or questions? Yes, Councillor Purdue-Horan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know I speak on behalf of other Independent Alliance colleagues in welcoming the inclusion of a review of travelling expenses, the expense scheme, for the September the 6th meeting. I noticed that there was a significant adverse publicity in the local press last month or so, and I understand at least one serious allegation has been submitted for investigation. So my question, Mr. Chairman, is what format will the review follow to ensure that we re-establish or at least reassure public confidence in the scheme, and who will be invited to give evidence and such like?
The report will set out the parameters of the current scheme. The report hasn't been prepared yet. I wanted to give officers time to put together a report, but I would imagine that it's going to set out the parameters of the current scheme to see whether those parameters are still applicable, possibly to look at other ways in which business can be conducted without the necessity to travel, because we are in a changing situation, and the pandemic has highlighted that. But I would also point out that whenever travelling expenses are set down, there is always comment from someone about the level of travelling expenses. And we have to bear in mind that we are a county that is, I think, 50 miles from top to bottom. So if you live at the top, it's a long way down here to attend meetings, and you are perfectly able, and it's legitimate, to claim travelling expenses for that work. No doubt when we move to Top Wighay, or the new county hall, then those from the north of the county won't have so far to travel, and their expenses will correspondingly reduce. But that will be the format of the report. Of course, it will be a full and frank discussion, and members of the committee at the time will be free to make what observations and comments they wish to make. Councillor Lee.
Chairman, thank you. It's really important, this, and I look forward to this report, and I don't want to talk too much about it before it happens. However, we do have to accept that we have some councillors that don't take any, and we have councillors that have to because financially can't afford to offset it. And